horror games are fucking boring. For the most part, anyway. The majority don't really have that much to say and rely on a couple of jump scares paired with loud noises to get a cheap reaction out of their audience. Beyond a change in location or a new monster design, if you've played one, you've played them all. It just gets to be a bit predictable after a while. And at that point, are they even scary anymore? But the best horror media exposes us to the terrors of our reality and experiences in unexpected ways. Not just presenting those fears in an immersive environment, but as something we can overcome, outrun, and fight back against. Catharsis. And that's a hard balance to strike. But when it happens, it can be genuinely life-changing. So this is how a horror game saved me from burnout. Or the Lovecraftian horror of work-life balance. Before I get into the video essay, just wanted to jump in here and remind you to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more video essays like this one. And if you'd like to financially support me in producing more of this content in the future, since it's really not cheap, I have a Ko-fi page linked in my description as well as the pinned comment, but more about that at the end of the video. Horror media is at its most compelling when it uses the unique tropes of its genre to explore what makes our everyday reality terrifying. Sure, there's plenty of horror that leans on a quick jump scare to force a reaction out of you. Or maybe it chooses graphic violence and gory visuals over anything actually frightening. But great horror can use a monster to represent anything from capitalism to sexual shame to grief. I've played plenty of video games in the horror space that set a great mood, have a fun premise, but don't really have a point, a perspective. But every once in a while, a horror game surprises me, not with a jump scare, but with a heart. The kind of storytelling that uses metaphor to tackle something real. Still Wakes the Deep wasn't initially on my radar when I heard rumblings about it on my Twitter timeline. Yes, I still call it Twitter. It didn't really pull me in. Something about the trailer didn't really stand out from all the others I had been seeing around that time. First person, dark corridors, flickering flashlights, and plenty of gore. I don't know, kind of been there, done that, you know? But then I started seeing it pop up on my friends' Twitch streams. First, Robo Dessert.
What the fuck? What the fuck was that? Fuck you.
And then Couch Bugs.
Oh god, it's coming back! Ah! Ah! No! That's not the right button.
And I didn't want to be left out of the loop. The details and environments were looking more and more intriguing by the day. Fine, I thought to myself, I'll try it out too. And after booting up the game, the rough churning waves gave way to a heartfelt voiceover.
Wish you hadn't got yourself into this mess, but you did.
Which I was glad to have subtitles for, gotta be honest. A message from home across the endless North Sea. And then I filled the work boots of Kaz McCleary for just another day aboard the Kadal oil rig. Business as usual. Until the derrick hits something and all hell breaks loose. Quite literally, cut off from the world, Kaz has to find a way back home to his family and survive the most OSHA-defiant workplace of all time. Was OSHA even a thing back in the 70s? It's quite the ride and devilishly immersive. From start to finish, this game held onto me with an iron grip, and I would definitely recommend you play it if you haven't already. There's strong parallels between Kaz's Workday from Hell and horror classics like The Thing, while also bringing in references to more modern sci-fi like Annihilation. It's definitely much more unique in its presentation than the trailers give it credit for. The sound design is intense at times, and the story is beyond moving, personal. There's so many layers the deeper you look, which, seeing as the dev team is the Chinese room, is no surprise, really. They essentially invented the immersive walking sim genre with 2012's Dear Esther, and further perfected it with Everybody's Gone to the Rapture in 2015. And now, with Still Wakes the Deep, the Chinese room isn't reinventing the wheel, but they are making sure it's well-oiled, fine-tuned, and has something to say.
Fuck's sake!
It's not very often that I come out of a horror game of this nature with a new perspective on my own life. But there's something to be said about games that really nail that immersive aspect. Getting you roped in with all the tools at its disposal, all the while the rope slowly morphs into grotesque tentacles before you even realize it. The further I fell down this game's rabbit hole, the more strange and twisted things got. Bit by bit, the escalation of this world's anomalies started to slip out of sight. I just started taking these fleshy hallways and distorted features for granted, like macabre decoration, their brutality banal. It started to just become a fact of this oil rig. Had those pustules and eyeballs always been there? Those moans? Or was that the rusted metal warping? The supernatural elements started to blend into the mundane. It was hard to tell what was out of place anymore. What was insidious became average. As I've mentioned in a few of my video essays at this point, at the beginning of the year, I got laid off from my job. And spoiler alert, that fucking sucked. But I took that as a sign to start pursuing full-time content creation with my video essays and my Twitch streams. Something which honestly had been my dream for years. And I did it, relying on the kindness of strangers, donations to my Ko-fi page, and being extra cautious with my spending. I was able to survive and create some of my favorite content to date. I had made enough connections over the years to make it work. But then, the day after my birthday stream, everything came crumbling down. I was locked out of my Twitch account because of my two-factor authentication being linked to an old phone number I no longer had access to. And before you ask, yes, I contacted Twitch support and basically radio silence. 3.5 years of progress, and my main source of income at that point, lost. Obviously, I had a panic attack, but then immediately got to work creating a new Twitch account and spreading the word any way I could. I DM'd friends, made Discord announcements, tweeted about my situation, anything I could to let people know what was going on. I didn't give myself a moment to catch my breath. My livelihood was on the line. So I streamed 7 days straight to get my brand new Twitch account to affiliate as soon as humanly possible. That meant I could once again make money from subscriptions, bit donations, the occasional ads, and then I was back on the grind, pedal to the metal, trying to make up for that lost time and lost income. I scheduled big events and an entire week of co-op streams with all of my friends who had any spare time, all the while still reaching out to as many people as I could. Does that sound exhausting? Because yeah, it definitely was. I was having mind-shattering panic attacks every single day, pushing myself because how else was I going to pay for the roof over my head? For the food I forgot to eat during this time, panic attack after panic attack, I felt like my humanity was leaking out of a splitting, skull. It's hard to put into words what exactly that feels like. And this feeling became a nearly constant part of me. I was starting to hyper-focus on whether or not I could make rent that month, feeling myself fray little by little. Full-on panic attacks were simply a fact of life, something I needed to work my schedule around. And I kept pushing myself to push my work further. Sleepless nights led to irritable outbursts, pushing away friends. Sorry, by the way, to those friends. And that, of course, led to my work suffering. A paradox, but a cycle I couldn't seem to get out of. But that's the thing about burnout. These seemingly extreme reactions to stress start to just become your life. They still take their toll, but they feel less urgent. Maybe they were always there, like a jump scare that's lost its impact, or an oil rig slowly abandoning its architecture for organic excrescence. What was insidious became average.
So you start putting extra work onto yourself, and it burns you out that much faster.
That's my friend Jinsey, or Proper Bird, here on YouTube. She's a full-time streamer and YouTuber, like me, but she's been doing this for way longer than I have. So I called her up to get her perspective on burnout when creating pays your bills.
As a content creator, here's the thing. People always say, oh, it's such a great thing because you're your own boss. And that's true in a way, but you're also then yelling at yourself all of the time. Because if you are a content creator, you decide how much money you make in any given month, depending on how much you do. So a lot of the times you'll think to yourself, well, I got to do more because what if my next month is bad? Or what if, I can only do this for another year and then everything will crash and burn? That's all on you. So there's just so much pressure on you as a person to just go harder, just push yourself a little harder, because maybe this next video will blow up and then everything will be okay. I started doing these really, really long days, but it didn't really do that much for me. But in my head, it was just like, if I do more, if I just do more, then it'll be okay. I just have to do more until eventually you crash, and then you can do nothing.
One thing I forgot to mention about my time with the game was that I played the whole thing in one sitting on Twitch. It's not the longest game out there by any means, and there weren't too many times I found myself lost or stuck. Shout out to the yellow paint that, in my opinion, blends in pretty well with this setting of bright reds, greens, and blues. It kept the pace frantic without being too hand-holdy. But hey, mileage may vary. All in all, Still Wakes the Deep took me about 6 hours of non-stop gameplay to finish. I was actually so invested in what was going on, I didn't even allow myself a break apart from a 2-minute trip to the bathroom. Hello. And while streaming, I'm always on. Trying to hold an engaging dialogue, finding opportunities for entertainment, and doing everything with positivity. The more the game went on, the more I felt my irritability set in. Minor annoyances got to me. I saw the view count dipping out of the corner of my eye, which made me second guess myself. The game was fun. I hate it here. I hate it here. I hate it here. But my stream wasn't. I wasn't. It's no coincidence that all of the oil rig's employees are victims of their place of work. Some are crushed by tools they once utilized, others drown. And these humans turned horrors were quite literally consumed by their work, twisted, no, mangled into versions of themselves that their loved ones back home would never recognize. Half conscious while in excruciating pain. begging for help, speaking as if their workday must go on, unaware of their monstrous exterior. On an oil rig with a cold ocean between you and the rest of the world, there exists no work-life balance, no privacy, at least not really. Work slithers into every moment of your day. Eating, socializing, showering. It's all done alongside coworkers. Roommates are colleagues, smothering your individuality until eventually, what are you outside of your employment? After all, in modern culture, we often introduce ourselves with a name, closely followed by our profession. And usually, that's about it. In fact, it's so common, I even did this earlier with Jinsey. It's a habit that's been drilled into us for decades upon decades. But when we need a paycheck to house ourselves, to eat, it's easy to force ourselves to work harder than we should. We put so much of ourselves into what we do. Identity and labor homogenized. In Still Wakes the Deep, the only one to survive it all, despite everything, is Kaz. Maybe the most foul-mouthed final girl in all of horror media.
Fuck! Don't you answer me back!
The one person on this oil rig who's been severed from the ties of his employment. Jobless? Maybe. But he escapes with his humanity intact. And even in his final moments, while the fires of an inevitable explosion consume him, he's shown peace, dropping out of consciousness leisurely, reflecting on what mattered most in his life. Family, love, friends, happiness. Not even one mention of his job, finances, or work-induced stress, because that never defined him as a person in the first place. There's a myth out there that artists can't make impactful work while happy. And it's true that some of the best music came out of a place of pain. But there's an equal amount of art out there made during times of happiness and fulfillment. The image of the tortured artist is way more captivating, of course. Overcoming conflict and being rewarded with powerful art at the end is admittedly a narratively satisfying notion. Maybe it leads to cathartic forms of expression or important introspection. I suppose the work that I do isn't life-changing by any stretch of the imagination. I doubt these video essays have had any profound effect on anyone out there in the foggy miasma of internet white noise. My Twitch streams, at their most impactful, are just enough to tune out the doom-tinged radio static that looms just out of our collective perception. But at least from what I can tell, people connect much more heavily to what I put out there when I'm friendly, approachable, and just, like, happy? Please. At its most basic, what I do boils down to presenting my opinion about a video game or playing said games in a way that hopefully reads as entertaining to someone. And sure, that sounds easy enough. I'm not a brain surgeon, but basically, I'm always looking for a relatable anecdote or a unique perspective to share. While pilots and Border Patrol agents usually get to leave their work at work, my work asks me to mine the raw materials of my life experience for your entertainment. Never really resting. Who knows? What I'm doing at any moment has potential to become a tale to tell around the digital campfire. So when every moment of your life becomes your work, where does that balance come from? And what happens when you mine those raw materials, your life stories, your personality, your humor, for too long, in the pursuit of the elusive growth of your platform. At the time of recording my voiceover for this video, my YouTube channel has around 9,000 subscribers, which in the grand scheme of online platforms isn't that impressive. But to me, that's over 9,000 people who are interested, however passively, in my thoughts, my words, and how I express them. That's a lot of eyeballs, especially taking into account that most people have 2 of them. That accomplishment does not go unnoticed, but it is a source of pressure too.
It's like the pressure was there before I even realized it was. And I don't think I really paid attention to it in that way until I had been doing it for a few years, and I was just like, why am I so tired? Why is this suddenly becoming so difficult to do?
RoboDessert is another good friend of mine whose main source of income is content creation, and he had a similar perspective on his time online.
There's just always this fear/pressure that whatever you're doing at any time, regardless of how much you did that day, is not enough. You should have done more. You should have posted another tweet. It is constant. So if you slip up and have a bad day, like, good luck. You know, it could be good, and they could see what's really going on, and they could be really supportive. Or you might have people that are like, yeah, this guy kind of sucks now, you know?
As someone who earns most of his income through streaming on Twitch and in donations to my Ko-fi, I'm incentivized to always be in a good mood, to smile, to enjoy a game, to not share negative opinions for fear that people might not like me and might not want to stick around, to never say the wrong thing in a 20-minute long video essay or during one of several 6-hour streams during the week, finding that razor-thin balance between agreeable and real. That psychic damage of watching everything you say, choosing every word so carefully, it adds up before you even know it. So, a few weeks ago, I had been having a rough patch emotionally, taken just enough of that psychic damage, you know? And I wanted to get out from behind my desk a bit, so I made myself a cup of admittedly mediocre hot chocolate and put on a movie I had somehow never seen. I know, right? As a huge fan of Hayao Miyazaki's films, how had I missed Kiki's Delivery Service? It's one of those inevitable movies. I'll get around to it at some point. For some reason, that night I needed something that just felt like a warm hug from an old friend. And after growing up with the lush colorscapes and vibrant storytelling of things like Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away, that old friend appeared wearing a big red bow and flowing black dress. Honestly, I didn't have much expectation going in, beyond a few gift sets on Tumblr back in the day and the ephemeral recommendation of, "It's cozy." I hadn't really heard people talk about this film with the same level of reverence that people reserve for Miyazaki's grander blockbusters. But I wasn't ready for any high stakes that night. So I tucked in for a laid-back time with a 13-year-old witch on her journey of self-discovery. Upon finding this charming, faux European town, Kiki finds a place to stay and realizes that the locals haven't encountered a witch in some time.
Can we look for a new town?
Seeing an opening in the market, she starts delivering packages to make money. After all, there's no competing with a literal witch on a broomstick. But soon, Kiki molds her entire life around this work, making no time for friendships or even herself.
Flying used to be fun until I started doing it for a living.
Soon, there's no time for the witch training she initially left home for. Work, work, work. Until one day, she literally loses her magic, her spark, what made her special in the first place, all because she pushed herself too hard for too long. after that burnout takes hold, Kiki's unable to earn a living doing what she loves. And she quite literally loses the one aspect of her personhood that she'd been using to identify herself to everyone she'd met on this journey.
Hi. My name's Kiki, and I'm a witch.
Identity and labor homogenized. She lost what made her her. Who was she if she was no longer able to fly or talk to her sassy Phil Hartman cat? Was Kiki even Kiki anymore? Turns out the stakes couldn't possibly get any higher, and she never fully regains that magic. That hit way harder than I thought it would. How could a movie from 1989 feel so timely? Well, since Japan's nationwide efforts to strengthen its economy after the Second World War, office workers have been incentivized more and more to put the needs of their company over their own, to eat, sleep, and breathe their work, sometimes forgoing basic human necessities. This, of course, leads to an unhealthy work-life balance, and in some cases, even karoshi, a Japanese phenomenon which literally translates to overwork death. While the first cases of karoshi were reported as far back as 1969, it was a 1988 labor force survey that really made headlines, reporting that almost a fourth of Japanese businessmen worked over 60 hours a week or more, leading to a common sight of men in suits sleeping on the side of busy Tokyo streets between workdays. And some weren't sleeping. While a general sense of a more collectivist culture in Japan can easily feed into an employee's sense of duty to their workplace, taken to the extreme, some ambitious workers may spend so much time working that they forget to eat or even see their families. When your life and social bonds are directly tied to your place of work, how could you not pour your entire soul into it? This phenomenon has only become more dire in the decades since, and it's not hard to imagine Hayao Miyazaki working on adapting Kiki's delivery service, reading those gruesome statistics, seeing passed out businessmen on the way to Studio Ghibli, and penning that added storyline of Kiki's burnout. And it wouldn't be his last time exploring how we link our identities to our work, warning us not to lose that magic spark, or worse, become a statistic.
I think it's paradoxical. I think streaming is a source of energy in the same way that it is also a drain on my energy.
That's Kyle, one half of Couchbugs, who took their first extended break from full-time creation recently, and he echoed many of the things my other friends had voiced as well.
Wake up in the morning and my first thought when I wake up every morning is, okay, when's our next stream? What are we doing? It's draining. It's hard. It's not as hard as working at a McDonald's, but it is a different kind of hard.
And clearly, I wasn't alone in this paralysis of finding it impossible to give myself permission to step away when I needed it most.
I guess there's always this fear that, well, there's always something that could come by that's better. You come back and it's like, well, what if everyone else has found something else to do at our time slot?
And while I don't think I was on the verge of passing away, the risk of losing my spark, whatever makes you come back to these video essays or my Twitch streams, it was too great to ignore. So yeah, fuck it. It was definitely time for a break. And take a break I did. No checking analytics or planning streams, no writing scripts, just existing for a while. I got to be the human being again, rather than filmotter, the content creator. You know? So when what was insidious becomes average, what do? Unfortunately, there's no concrete answer, which doesn't exactly result in the most narratively rewarding video essay. But that's life sometimes. Taking breaks can only heal so much. There's always that potential that we slip back into self-destructive behaviors without realizing. The risk of dimming your spark, lurking like a Lovecraftian monstrosity below the sea, slumbering, but lying in wait. Especially with the pressure we put on ourselves to achieve our goals. The pressure of surviving capitalism with a smile. The pressure to know our limits. The pressure to know how to navigate our life's hardships. The pressure to know when to take a breather. The pressure to find our unique path. The pressure to be confident in our abilities. The pressure to find enough time to do it all. The pressure to be perfect at every turn. The pressure to always have something insightful to say. If there's anything this oil rig horror game has taught me, it's that it is possible to find a balance among overwhelming pressures. I mean, if this man can find his balance on these slippery ass beams and collapsing structures and explosions and more explosions and whatever this is, there must be a balance between self-care and hard work, even with this looming pressure to keep pushing and pushing in hopes that it might just be worth it this time. Normalizing that risk of burnout, the loss of ourselves, risking the possibility that in the future, despite our best efforts, this pressure still wakes the deep. Hey there, thank you so much for watching the video essay. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more video essays like this one, and click the like button down below because it really helps these videos get seen by more people. And honestly, it would mean a lot to me on this video specifically because it's kind of the end of a chapter for me as a content creator in a way. And speaking of new chapters, make sure to follow me on my new Twitch account, filmotter 2 on Twitch, and also my new Blue Sky account because Twitter kind of died while I was editing this video. But I could not have made this video essay without my friends Jinsey, RoboDessert, and Kyle from Couchbugs, so please go give them follows. Their links are going to be down below in the description. And speaking of, thank yous are also in order for Oyster Milk, Dear Papaya, Kyle and Rain from Couchbugs, Crazy Tyndall, Paula, Nightmare God, One's the Loneliest, John Lax, Bean Fiello, Velt Walker, Sarah, Lion Bite, Max Wattage, Comrade Quest, Robertson, Cap Danvers, and Voxamandius. Those are my monthly supporters over on my Ko-fi page, and I couldn't have made this video without them either. If you're unfamiliar, Ko-fi is sort of like Patreon, but a lot cooler. And if you want to help support this content financially and want to see some behind the scenes content like the full versions of the interviews that I had with my friends, sneak peeks at future video essays, and get a shout out at the end here, you can join for as little as $4 a month. Or you can also just drop a one-time donation if that's more your speed. Another way that you can help support this channel is by checking the description for links to any of the games that I mention in any of my video essays. If you buy anything through those Humble Bundle links, I get a cut as well as trans charities, which is pretty awesome. And it's at no extra cost to you. So, hey, if you were going to check out those games anyway, you might as well, right? Anyway, thank you again so much for watching the video. This one means a lot to me. I put a lot of myself into it. I hope it shows. And, oh yeah.